one of the things that I'm here to talk to you about, what I've been asked to talk to you guys about, is content marketing. Product marketing, it's a lot easier to visualize. It's a lot easier to understand and measure what you're doing. You write a landing page, you run a Google AdWords campaign, you have a clear CTA, you measure the results from that. These are all easy things for us as marketers to kind of get our heads around. Content marketing, on the other hand, is a little bit trickier, right? I mean, it's subtler, and it's a lot harder to measure. So one of the things that I'm going to be kind of talking to you guys about today is some strategies around how to take your content marketing and turn it into a cohesive whole that will function sort of as a machine to drive leads, to drive your brand reputation, that sort of thing. So before we jump into all of that, let's take a look at some examples of content marketing. So of course, I'm sure that you've all seen, YouTube videos that do this sort of thing. Basically, if you go onto YouTube right now and you search for how to brew Chemex coffee, the top 20 results are all associated with a particular coffee roasting brand or a famous coffee brewing company. This is if you watch these videos, you're not going to see them say, use Stumptown Coffee brand coffee roasting beans. They're just introducing you to the information about this so you can brew better coffee. And they're assuming that what's going to happen is you'll end up with a positive relationship to their brand as a result of that. But it's a very soft sell. Another example, think pieces on Medium. So, if you've wandered through the archives of Medium, you're going to come across a lot of pieces that are highly educational, that are going to help you do your job better, but that are associated with the brands that the authors work for. So this is an example, Design Like a Developer. Really interesting piece, talks about reconceiving how you can improve the quality of your digital designs. But you'll see in the article itself, we have two references to the brand that it's associated with, Nimber. So you have one in the body of the text and one in a caption for an image. Otherwise, this piece doesn't sell anything. But you'll see you've got the byline, and in the author biography at the bottom, you see we've got some references to that. So that's going to drive, again, it's going to help your customers associate you positively with this information. You've also got newsjacking. So, newsjacking, in case any of you aren't familiar with that, basically that's when a brand will notice a trend that's going on. Maybe it's on Twitter, maybe it's on Facebook, or just in the news generally, and they'll create content that sort of targets that in the hopes that they can sort of piggyback off of that positive, or the conversation that's going on, and that'll sort of reflect positively on their brand. Sometimes it works really well. Sometimes not so well. I'm sure we've all seen, the various fallout from different kinds of poorly executed newsjacking content marketing strategies. But again, this is something that you see across the market. Also, native ads. So this one is from BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed is the #1 viral marketing, or viral content production house. Here we've got a piece, 15 things we did at school that future students will never understand. And you read through all 15 of those, and then right at the very bottom, we see what the actual point is, which is technology's come a long way. Upgrade your old school gadgets for the new year with Intel-powered 2-in-1 devices. So again, sort of sneaking in your brand name into content that's not directly about promoting your product. So, these are all techniques that we're all familiar with. These are things that get talked about a lot as far as content marketing goes. But the argument that I'm going to make today is really that this is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to content marketing. That actually we need to think about this in a much more holistic way, that we need to think about not just the sort of, candy coating on the outside of our content, but building something that's got a deeper structure with a lot more value and a lot more educational content, so that readers can get lost in what you're talking about, instead of just reading a listicle and then closing that tab and never thinking about you ever again. So, we've taken a look at some examples. The question is, what technically is content marketing? Well, content marketing is a style of marketing that involves the creation and sharing of online materials, blogs, videos, and social media posts that does not explicitly promote a brand, but is intended to stimulate interest in its products or services. So as you can see from this definition, content marketing is a lot more about what it doesn't do than what it does do, right? So to take a look at some of the key features of content marketing, you can see, in my opinion, the number one thing for content marketing to do is it needs to be informative and educational. That's why people come to that kind of content and remember it and associate your brand with being a leader in whatever field you specialize in. As part of that educational mission, it can't be biased, ostensibly, right? I mean, we're all writing for our own, purposes, but if the reader can detect that you are selling your product, you're going to decrease the validity of that content. So if you're going to fold in little bits of promotional sort of nudges towards your product, you got to be really careful about that, because it's easy to turn off your readers and have them go, oh, this isn't actually a valid source of information. This is just somebody trying to sell me a product. So again, along with that, it's not traditionally promotional. What you're focusing on with content marketing is you're focusing on on your reputation. You're focusing on building your brand recognition. So along with that means, again, like I was saying, you got to be very gentle. You got to be subtle as you're working to promote your brand. The other big thing, like I said, with product marketing, you can see that the results from that show up relatively quickly. You can look at your sales. You can look at the click rates on your sign up now buttons. But with content marketing, it's more of a medium to long-term goal. So don't start setting up your don't set up a content marketing strategy and then 2 weeks later say, oh, it's not working. Never mind, I'm just going to go back to traditional marketing. If you want to invest in this, then you have to take the time. You have to sort of play a long game on this, because it's about generating a body of content that's going to be appealing to people who care about what you're talking about. So, and again, that idea of it's not directly monetized. This is about reputation, not about direct dollars that come in at that moment, because it's again aimed to boost reputation. The big thing, what you're selling with content marketing is your expertise, not your product. And that's tricky, because we're all much more comfortable selling our products. We can sit down in a meeting and the product specialist is going to tell us all of the things that we can promote, and we'll walk into that room confident because we're walking in with our product held out first. In this case, though, it's more about the collective knowledge that you and your organization have. And selling that. So you and your organization have that knowledge. You have to have faith in that. Recognize that you are specialists. You've spent years building this expertise. So now you just have to, the question is, how do you get from an ad hoc content strategy where you have tons of different styles of content marketing, different types of information that you can provide, and get that to a cohesive plan, something that's going to work together to help feed the people who are looking for information from that Google query into your leads or into your customer base. So that's that's the big sort of the thing that I'm making an argument for here is that we have to start thinking about content marketing in terms of this larger network of information, not just in terms of the a single article and the clickability of that sort of thing. So how do you do this? How do you put this thing together? Well, you start by building your content. I mean, that's simple enough, right? As with all marketing, you have to know who your audience is. So let's take an example so that we can work concretely here. So let's say I'm an accountant and I'm really happy with the consistent business that I've gotten. But I'm noticing that some of my customers, they're retiring out of an active investment process. They're not they're not requiring as much of my services. So my target base is a retiree age, and now I want to shift to start talking to millennials. These are people that they have less money, they have less knowledge, but they're going to grow into that core constituency that I want to serve. So how do I direct my information towards them so that they feel so that they start to associate me with, oh, how did I learn how to do how to plan for my retirement? Oh, it was David's accounting service, and then maybe they'll take that next step and sign up with me. So, once you've identified your target audience, find a problem they're facing and solve it. It's really very simple. It's your customers, what they need, the questions that they have, And if you don't, start talking to them. But once you have that in mind, once you know who you're talking to and the problems that they have, start asking yourself some questions. Say, what are the top five questions that my customers are asking themselves? What do I want to answer for them? So in this hypothetical situation, these are the ones that I came up with. I'm not an accountant. I don't know if these are the actual questions that people would ask. But how do I get a home loan? How do I plan for retirement? How do I invest my money for growth? How do I manage my monthly budget? How do I pay down my student loans? These are the things that are on the minds of millennials right now, and maybe they're not being served as well as they could be, or maybe you've got a particular perspective or a particular voice that you want to add to that conversation. So you start with these questions, the crucial core questions. Once you have that in place, the way that I do it is I sort of start to divide the content into 3 categories. I start with the core. So these are the topics that are going to be answering those 5 questions directly. These are things like essential techniques for easy budgeting, the do's and don'ts of shopping for a home loan. Again, things that are going to be useful, that are going to be of interest to this demographic. Invest now to gild your golden years, mutual funds versus money market investments. And you just go through those questions and start writing out idea after idea after idea. You're not writing the pieces yet, you're just ideating, just coming up with topics to cover. Once you have those core topics isolated, once you know what the most important things are for you to communicate to your users, then start to build a layer of supporting content that will help someone who doesn't have the skill or the knowledge to understand those core topics yet. These educational topics are going to be the things that will help define your terms. They're going to help lift someone who is a little bit too, maybe a little bit too much of a beginner to jump into your content, to fully understand what you're talking about. And you can sort of lift them up out of that and bring them into your kind of core demographic. So, credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. What is a credit score? Down at the bottom, we've got, a glossary of financial terms, investing FAQ. So these are, this is very simple stuff. This can be very basic. But the idea is that if you create your own internal content that defines the terms that someone needs to understand in order to use your product or to understand your content, then instead of linking off your site and pointing towards someone else, instead of pointing to TurboTax, I point to my own content. And so that allows you to create an ecosystem of information so that users can start to kind of get lost in what you're doing. Once you have the educational topics in place, then you can start to think kind of a little bit more creatively. Think about those think pieces. Think about what it is that you particularly see, the trend lines for your industry, the things that are the big picture questions that are maybe a little bit more interesting than the basic stuff, that can differentiate you from your competitors in terms of thought leadership. And once you have this list, once you have your core topics, the things that need to be answered, once you have the educational support features that are going to help someone understand those core topics, and then once you have something that kind of reaches beyond those sort of, the mundane topics that you have to cover, then you've got your content strategy laid out, and then you can just set deadlines for yourself or for your teams. Hand out some of these assignments. Find people in your organization who have specialization in some of these things. Partner with them and work with them to create this body of content. It doesn't have to be immediate. It's a slow-growing process, but if you start with a cohesive idea, instead of going, this week, what am I going to write about? Well, I saw something in the news about, interest rates, so I guess I'll write about that this week. Instead, have a sense for your long-term goals, and that's going to make it both easier to create a cohesive piece, and then also it's going to make it a lot easier to get that work done in an efficient and an effective way. Once you have this body of content, and once you have designed the body of content to be interrelated, as you produce it, you're going to start to interlink the different pieces. The way that I see it, we all think about our content at different scales. So do you think about your content piece by piece? If that's the case, then you're going to be thinking, okay, what's the catchiest headline? How do I catch attention? How am I going to promote this on social media? And if you're doing that, good. That's the right thing to be doing. But the problem is, what that can open you up to is sort of having a little bit of a superficial body of content, very sort of temporary things that aren't going to have persistent value. And that's you're pouring so much energy into these pieces. You're promoting them individually. You're fighting against all of your competitors, trying to claw your way to the top of the search results for a particular topic. And so that limits the value of your content, and it makes it very, very temporary. On the other hand, do you think about content in terms of a set sequence, such as an article series, an ebook, or a content campaign? So if you're doing that, you have determined what the basic set of information is that someone needs to understand about this, and you go through and you give them article number 1 and your reader's happy, and then article number 2 and your reader's happy, and article number 3. You target this at a particular audience, at a particular ideal demographic, and you deliver what they need. If you're doing that, great. But the problem with that is that you're gonna come up against the problem of you'll have drop off. How do you create a single sequence of information that's going to appeal to everyone? Like if I tried to build a series that would talk to all of you here in this room, some of you are more advanced, some of you are less advanced, some of you are really interested and have a lot of time, some of you are a little bit more rushed. If that's the case, then you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trouble targeting that. And so in some ways, that idea of creating a set sequence, it's a little bit authoritarian, right? I mean, I'm saying, I know what you need to know, I know what you need to read it in, and this is how I'm going to provide it. And if you don't like that, well, go ahead and close the window and never come back to my website again. Instead, what I'm sort of arguing for is thinking about your content as a network of hyperlinked information. Think about Wikipedia. I don't know about you, but I get lost in Wikipedia. I find Wikipedia so pleasurable because it allows me to pursue the information and the pathways that I find interesting and engaging that talk to my needs. And so I'll open up Wikipedia at 8 p.m. and then at 2 in the morning, I'm still, click, click, click. And I've gone from how to make a cheesecake to, the Prussian War, because that's how humans function. We're hunters. We like to pursue that sort of thing. And so if you take the structural elements of Wikipedia, where you've got those interlinked components, and you bring your own sort of aesthetic modern look to it, you can get the benefits of Wikipedia without the sort of like aesthetic downfall of the wiki structure. So again, now we're back to this network that I showed you before. This may look very intimidating, but really it's just about hyperlinks, and it's about making it so that your content, you don't drop people into a blog or an article that's a dead end, because you don't want them to have to close the window. You don't want them to have to back up into your file structure or into your page structure. You want to always have them take that next step. And if you do that, then you can speak to different demographics or different sort of archetypes. So, maybe you've got the thinker. Now, this is an advanced person who already knows a lot about what's going on. They're really interested in the thought leadership and the op-eds and what you have to say about the market. But then they check those out on Medium, and then they dive into some of the research or the marketing analysis or the data, and they explore around and see what you have there. But that isn't the path that somebody who's a little bit more curious, but not such a deep thinker will take. Maybe that person will jump into a piece about newsjacking, and then dive into best practices and check out skill sharing and advice and FAQs. And if you interlink it, then you're gonna let them take that path for themselves. And a newbie, somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, maybe they come in off of a silly listicle, and suddenly they're like, wait a minute, I actually want to learn a little bit about what this company does. The big point that I'm trying to push for is, when we think about content marketing, we always think about that top layer, because that's the stuff that gets all the clicks on social media. What I'm arguing for is that you can create something, you can create a machine, a core of highly educational content, and then sort of promote that content, bring in new clicks through this layer of traditional content marketing, but it's all still content marketing. And what it does is it allows your users to get lost in your content, to really dive deep into what you're doing, and that's going to produce a much more positive brand association than again the 10 ways to save money by not going out to eat or something like that. What does it look like? I mean, again, I'm proposing. I put up this complicated network of different interlinking pieces. It's really, really simple, and it's what you're already doing. It's just about reorienting how you're thinking about it and what your priorities are and how much attention you apply to it. So, you do the same stuff that you've always done. Create curated hub pages that are specifically directed towards a particular demographic. You see this on, if you go onto HubSpot, you see a sales section and a marketing section. That's the same kind of thing. That's content that's been collected specifically for particular job categories. Do it through hyperlinks. As you're writing your pieces, look for ways to interlink into your other content. Think about, okay, if somebody is maybe a couple of levels below the technical ability of this article, where can I fold in a couple of definitions? Where can I direct them towards some more information? Also, if you're doing this on your own site, use a top articles box, or more topics, or at the end of your article, give some recommendations for where to go from there. Like the next piece that you think would be useful for them, and then make sure that you go in and you meticulously tag and categorize all of your content. So again, someone can hop from, oh, this is a really interesting article about budgeting, I want to see what else they have to say, and hop into it that way. So here I've just got a little bit of these are some of the articles that I came up with in my imaginary accounting firm, but you can see how you can just connect all of these sorts of things, so there's never a place where someone is left at kind of a dead node, an endpoint where they're well, there's nothing more for me to learn here. Click, close, and then they drop out of your content ecosystem. So the reason that I'm talking to you about all of this is the unfortunate truth is that we at Zoho are not BuzzFeed, and neither are you guys. That's not a bad thing, but it is the reality. If you try to be a new media company, if you try to act like you're going to be creating accounting blogs that are going to get shared broadly across social media, you're going to miss the point. So instead, don't try to be a new media company. Just be your company, and serve your customers with targeted, high-quality resources. If you do that, if you earn their positive regard, they'll thank you for it with their trust and their business. So, thank you.